At Thanksgiving dinner, my mother said, "You're not even a real part of this family." She raised her glass and smiled. "You're adopted. We never wanted you." My hands trembled as I asked, "Then why did you keep me?" My uncle choked on his drink as I slid over a letter written by someone they thought was dead. "I've been holding this in for a few months, and after everything that happened over the holidays, I don't know what to do with all of it anymore. It feels too heavy for one person to carry." What started as an awkward Thanksgiving with my estranged family turned into a night that completely redefined who I am, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with the truth. Here's a quick preview before I get into the whole thing. My mom raised her wine glass during dinner and said, "To the family. Well, most of us anyway. You're not even really a part of this family, Calla. You're adopted." "We never wanted you," I asked, shaking. "Then why did you keep me?" My Uncle Terence choked on his drink. I reached into my bag and slid a sealed letter across the table. It was from someone they thought had died 30 years ago. My mom turned white. No one has looked at me the same since. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. The kind of place with postcard mountains and crunchy autumn leaves and a population that all knows each other's business by the end of the week. Our house was the kind of middle-class Southern colonial that always had the scent of lemon pledge and pot roast hanging in the air. To the outside world, the Hargroves were stable, decent people. My dad, Ronald, was a respected high school principal. My mom, Miriam, ran a real estate business and had a flair for dramatics. Literally, she used to act in community theater. My older brother Silas and I attended the same schools, did family vacations, smiled in church pews. But behind the scenes, things were different, at least for me. I always felt like the volume was turned down on affection when it came to me. My parents weren't cruel, not outwardly, but there was always this subtle distance. The kind you can't name but you feel. Like I was walking on eggshells made of glass and nobody would tell me why. Growing up, I noticed little things. No baby photos of me, no stories about what I was like as a baby. When I asked questions, I got vague answers. "Oh, you were camera shy," Miriam would joke. "You screamed the whole first year." But the joke never landed. It felt like she was brushing away something else, something deeper. Silas, on the other hand, had a baby book the size of a phone book. Photos, locks of hair, birthday cards, even his hospital bracelet. Mine was basically a folded piece of construction paper with a stick figure on it. It wasn't until I was 27 and my father passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack that I started noticing more than just gaps. I was helping clean out his garage when I found an old cigar box hidden behind a false panel in one of his tool drawers. It had a single safety deposit box key inside, wrapped in a piece of cloth. I held on to it for a few months. I didn't even ask my mother about it. Something told me not to. But curiosity finally got to me, and I went to the Asheville Savings and Loan with it. I half expected it to be empty. It wasn't. Inside were three things: a faded birth certificate, a black and white photo of a woman holding a newborn, and a letter addressed to me in cursive handwriting. The name on the birth certificate wasn't Miriam Hargrove. It was Marietta Dubois. And just like that, everything tilted. I didn't open the letter right away. I couldn't. My heart was racing just holding it. I took it home, hid it in the back of a drawer, and sat on it for weeks. But once I started reading it, I couldn't stop. The letter was a gut punch. Marietta wrote to me from a facility in Baton Rouge. She said she gave birth to me after a relationship with a man she loved ended. She fought to keep me, but when her mental health took a hit, the state intervened. She said she believed I was placed in foster care. She never got updates. She didn't know where I'd gone, but she never stopped thinking of me. She never stopped writing letters, most of which apparently were returned or went unanswered. She ended the letter with, "I don't know if you'll ever read this, Calla, but you were wanted. You were loved. Just not by the people who took you in to hide their own shame." After reading it, I went cold. I had a DNA test done not long after. I didn't match anyone in the Hargrove family tree, not even Silas. I didn't tell anyone what I found. I wasn't ready to start a war over a paper trail. Until Thanksgiving. It had been 5 years since I last stepped foot in that house. I hadn't spoken to Miriam since Dad's funeral, and even then, her coldness cut through me like frostbite. I hadn't told her I was coming. I just showed up with a pie and a truth she wasn't ready to face. Dinner started off tense. Silas was cordial, His wife Nora quiet but friendly. Their kids were glued to tablets. My Uncle Terence was visiting from Roanoke and was already on his second glass of red wine by the time the turkey was carved. Miriam held court at the head of the table, making passive-aggressive comments all through the meal. When dessert came out, pecan pie and black coffee, she tapped her fork against her glass. "To my family," she said. "Well, most of us." I looked up. She was smiling. "You're not even really a part of this family, Calla," she said calmly. "You're adopted, we never wanted you, but Ronald insisted." Everything in the room stopped. I couldn't hear the TV in the background anymore, couldn't hear the kids laughing, couldn't hear my own heartbeat. My hands were trembling. "Then why did you keep me?" I managed to ask. Terence choked on his drink. Nora dropped her fork. Silas went white. Miriam gave me a look like she was daring me to break, like she expected it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the letter. I didn't say anything. I just slid it across the table. Miriam stared at the envelope like it was a live bomb. She didn't touch it. Terence looked over and read the name. "Marietta DuBois," he whispered. "Miriam, you told us she died years ago." Miriam didn't respond. She stood up slowly and walked into the kitchen. I sat there, still shaking. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run. Instead, I said, "She was my biological mother. That's what the letter says. That's what the birth certificate says." She wrote to me. "Dad kept it, she wasn't dead, you lied." Silas stood up. "What the hell is going on?" he asked Miriam through the doorway. She didn't answer. I could hear the fridge open and close, the soft thud of a wine bottle being set on the counter. Terence finally broke the silence. "Miriam, was Marietta the woman Ronald had the affair with?" Another silence. Then Miriam answered. "Yes." The air in that dining room became heavy with the weight of 3 decades of lies. "I'm going to stop here for now. But this isn't over. Let me know if you want me to continue. There's still more to this story, how Silas reacted, what Miriam said to me later that night, and what I discovered when I went looking for Marietta's grave in Baton Rouge. The atmosphere in the house after that was like something sucked all the air out and left nothing but static. No one touched the pie. No one asked me to explain further. My mother didn't come back into the dining room. Uncle Terence sat there frozen, still holding his fork halfway to his mouth like his body hadn't caught up to what his ears had heard. Nora gathered the kids and quietly took them to the guest room with their iPads, and Silas just kept staring at the letter sitting, unopened on the table like it was alive and breathing. I didn't feel relieved. I thought maybe, when I imagined this confrontation 1,000 times in my head, that it would feel like release. Vindication. Something cinematic. But instead, I felt hollow. Like every word I'd just spoken had cut a little piece out of me. It's one thing to suspect you're different. It's another to have it confirmed with cruelty. Silas walked me out to my car about an hour later. We didn't speak in full sentences, just fragmented thoughts, broken pauses. He asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was. Then he asked, "So you think she only adopted you because of the affair?" I shrugged. "The letter from Marietta says Dad pressured her to take me, to avoid a scandal. She never wanted me." He didn't defend her. That surprised me. Silas always tried to play the peacemaker, the mediator, the one who kept things polite and smooth. But this time, he just nodded and leaned against the car. "She hated Dad for a long time," he said after a moment. "I used to think it was just their personalities clashing, but now it makes sense. The way she always found ways to make you feel small." It was strange hearing him acknowledge it. Even as kids, Miriam always singled me out. She'd praise Silas for B's and criticize me for A's. She'd pick at my hair, my clothes, my laugh. Nothing I did was ever quite right, but he never said anything, not until now. "She told me once when I was about 10 that you were the hard one," Silas said, looking down. "Said you needed discipline because you didn't come from our blood. I didn't know what that meant back then." I couldn't respond. My throat felt tight. All I could do was nod. He put his hand on my shoulder before I got in the car. It was a quiet gesture, but the first time I ever really felt like he saw me, like he saw what I'd lived through. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the guest bedroom at a friend's house staring at the open letter from Marietta on the nightstand. I'd read it so many times it was starting to tear at the folds. Her handwriting was small, deliberate, the kind of script you only see in old love letters or greeting cards from grandmothers. She called me "my darling girl" in the first line. She talked about my birth like it was a sacred moment. She remembered how my tiny hand wrapped around her finger right after the nurse handed me to her. That she'd chosen the name Calla because of the flower, how they were resilient, how they grow in tough soil. She also wrote about the institution, about how, after she gave birth, her family had her committed, how she fought it but was overwhelmed, how she was told I was being temporarily placed with a family until she could get well, how no one ever told her it was a permanent adoption, that the updates stopped, the visits stopped, and then silence. Reading it was like hearing the echo of a woman who had spent years screaming into the void. And Dad, Ronald, he knew everything. He kept this letter. He kept the documents. He chose to hide it, but he didn't destroy it. That part haunted me. Why hide the truth if you still want it found? It made me wonder what kind of man he really was. I remembered him as kind but distant. I didn't get the bedtime stories or the piggyback rides, but he never turned away from me either. He'd help with homework, pick me up when Miriam forgot, and bring me books from the school library. I think maybe he loved me in his own quiet way. But he was also a coward. He protected his own image, let Miriam poison the air I breathed in that house, and then locked away the one piece of my identity that could have set me free earlier. 2 days later, Silas called me. I confronted her, he said, his voice tired. And, I asked, bracing myself. She doubled down, said it was none of my business, said Dad made her do it and she had no choice. I could almost hear him pinching the bridge of his nose like he always did when frustrated. She told me you were ungrateful for digging up the past, that you were just trying to punish her. I let out a bitter laugh. And I'm the one who was lied to. He was quiet for a beat, then said, she also told me not to talk to you. That didn't surprise me. And are you going to listen to her? No, he said simply. I'm not. The days that followed were surreal. I started getting emails from Terrence. I hadn't expected him to reach out, but he had questions. He said he remembered Marietta briefly. A quiet, beautiful girl who used to drop by Dad's office at the school. He never thought much of it at the time. She had this sadness in her eyes, he wrote. I always thought maybe she was just shy, but now I wonder what I missed. He apologized for not seeing it sooner, for never questioning why Miriam treated me differently, for standing by quietly all those years. I didn't hold it against him. I didn't have the energy to resent everyone. I'd spent most of my life trying to decipher subtle slights, trying to read between the lines of things people didn't say. Now I was overwhelmed by what they were saying. About a week later, I packed a small bag and drove to Baton Rouge. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even know if I'd find anything. But I had the name of the facility Marietta had mentioned. It was long shut down, converted into some kind of local archive. The staff there were kind, and after showing them the letter and explaining who I was, they let me access some records. Marietta died 10 years ago. The last note in her file was a discharge summary from a hospice center in St. Francisville, just north of Baton Rouge. She'd been alone, no family listed. But her file had pages of letters, most of them returned to the sender. My name was written over and over in the margins. The staff member handed me a copy of one last note from her personal effects. It wasn't long. If Calla ever comes looking, please tell her I loved her. I never stopped loving her. I prayed every day that she'd be okay. Tell her I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to keep her, but I never stopped being her mother. I cried harder than I've cried in years, not out of sadness, but out of something else. Something like relief, something like finally being seen by someone who should have been there from the beginning but never got the chance. I didn't expect to find a grave, but I did. A small, unmarked plot in a rural cemetery. The grass was overgrown. There were no flowers, just a simple stone with her name, birth and death dates, and nothing else. I sat there for hours, talking to her like I'd known her my whole life, because in some way I had. I'm going to pause here again, but there's more to share. Miriam reached out after I got back from Baton Rouge. She wasn't angry anymore, at least, not in the way I expected. What she said next has left me more confused than ever. I wasn't planning on updating again so soon, but after the trip to Baton Rouge, everything moved faster than I expected. The truth had been dormant for decades, and once unearthed, it started cracking everything open, faster, louder, and somehow clearer. When I returned home, I felt different. It wasn't just grief or loss anymore, it was like I'd finally stepped out of someone else's life. The version of me who begged for scraps of love at that table in Asheville was gone. I felt grounded. Angry, yes, hurt beyond words, but also free. I started writing down everything I had. Copies of Marietta's letter, my DNA results, the birth certificate, and everything I'd uncovered about my adoption. I put it all in a file, partly to keep it straight in my own mind, but also because something inside me was preparing for what came next. I didn't reach out to Miriam. I didn't need to. She called me. It was 3 days after I got back. I recognized the number, but I still stared at the screen for a solid minute before answering. Calla, she said. Her voice sounded older somehow. Hollow. I said nothing. I don't know what you want from me. Nothing, I said. I wanted the truth. I got it. That's more than you ever gave me growing up. She went quiet. Then your father was weak. Maybe, I replied, but you were cruel. And I think you enjoyed it, she scoffed. You never knew what it was like. Everyone is watching. Everyone whispered. The perfect Hargrove family ruined because he couldn't keep it in his pants. I leaned back in my chair. Her words weren't surprising anymore. So you took it out on me, I said. For 30 years, you punished a child for something she didn't choose. I gave you a home, she snapped. A name, food, education. You act like I threw you in a cage. No, I said, calm now. You gave me a home, sure, but you made it very clear I wasn't welcome in it. She exhaled sharply, like I'd worn her down. What are you planning to do with all of this? That was the question, wasn't it? And I realized I didn't want to hurt her in the way she feared. I didn't want her suffering or humiliated in front of neighbors or driven out of town. That would make me like her. But I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, the silence, the exclusion, the emptiness. I wanted her to sit in a room she once ruled and feel powerless, not out of vengeance, but for balance. A few days later, I met with Silas. I showed him everything. The documents, the photos, the letters. He read them slowly, carefully, like he was reading a history book he didn't know he was a part of. I want to take back my name, I told him. He nodded. You should. I'm going to change it legally. I'm taking her last name, Du Bois. Good, he said. Do it. Then he hesitated. What about Mom? I'm not going to ruin her life, I said, but I'm not going to protect her anymore either. That's when we came up with the idea. Silas had been asked to give a keynote speech at the retirement party for one of our dad's old colleagues, someone high up in the school district. It was going to be hosted at the high school. A huge event, alumni attending, donors, board members, even old friends of the Hargrove family. And Silas asked if I wanted to come with him and say a few words. Just a short speech, honoring Dad. I said yes. The night of the event, the school auditorium was buzzing. I hadn't been there since I graduated, and walking through the halls again felt like wading into a childhood dream. Familiar and far away. Miriam was there, of course, dressed in one of her best jackets, all pearls and posture. I could tell she hadn't expected me to show. When she saw me from across the room, her expression didn't change. She just watched. Silas spoke first, gracious and warm, remembering our dad's commitment to education and fairness. He was always good at reading a room. Then he introduced me. This next speaker is someone who has a unique perspective on Ronald Hargrove's legacy, he said. Someone who represents a part of his story many of us never knew. My sister Calla Du Bois. The name echoed through the room like a match striking. I walked to the podium slowly. Miriam froze in her seat. I didn't say anything inflammatory. No accusations, no finger-pointing. I simply told the truth. I spoke about growing up in the Hargrove household, about feeling different and never knowing why. I talked about discovering I was adopted, about the woman who gave birth to me, who never stopped looking for me. I spoke of how secrets can bury people alive, and how truth, even when painful, is what sets us free. And I said this. Ronald Hargrove gave me a name, a roof, and books, but Marietta Du Bois gave me my life. My name now reflects that truth. I am proud to carry the name of the woman who fought for me, even when the world erased her. This is not about shame or revenge. It's about making sure the real story gets told before it's lost forever. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was genuine. People stood, not everyone, but enough. Miriam sat in her chair, rigid, alone. Silas didn't sit beside her. Nora didn't either. She looked around, seeing faces that once adored her now looking through her. Not with cruelty, with indifference. That, more than anything, was her punishment. Since then, a lot has changed. I legally changed my name to Calla Du Bois. I've been in touch with a cousin of Marietta's, A woman named Alois who remembered the scandal from years ago and always wondered what happened to the baby. We've started having phone calls. She invited me to visit this summer. I've started writing, a memoir, maybe, or just a personal history. I don't know what it will become, but it helps. Silas and I are closer now than we've ever been. We're not trying to rewrite the past, just build something new. As for Miriam, she sends birthday cards. No notes, just a name signed at the bottom, no love, no mom. I don't respond, I don't need to. She sees the silence now. She feels it, and it speaks louder than anything I could ever say.